Hello and welcome to the Sabre Limited demo series. Today we're going to be doing an introduction to PrintVIS and Print MIS for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. A little bit about Sabre. Sabre Limited is a Dynamics 365 Business Central training, implementation, and consulting specialist for small and medium enterprise manufacturing anywhere throughout North America. And because the print industry generally is a small, medium manufacturing organization, we've specialized also in print industry in particular as one of our subverticals. To do this, we've selected PrintVIS. PrintVIS is an MIS add-on for Microsoft Dynamics NAV and Dynamics 365 Business Central. When you purchase the PrintVIS product, you're also going to be receiving licenses for Microsoft Dynamics. So you're going to have all your accounting, inventory control, fulfillment, and all of those functionalities that Dynamics does very well, plus the MIS features of PrintVIS. So I want to talk a little bit about PrintVIS cases and workflows today, and we'll start with a quick overview. To understand and to get into that overview, let's talk about what cases are. PrintVIS is based on this idea of a case, which we can think of as a file folder that holds all the information about our request for quotation from our customer, their artwork, the docket that we've created, the quote we've sent the customer, etc. It's like a file folder that contains all of that information in it, and it's sort of the main feature of PrintVIS, very similar to a sales order in a lot of other systems. So let's take a look. Start with the dashboard. This is a PrintVIS dashboard. It's actually a Microsoft Dynamics NAV role center. And in this particular case, we're looking at the role center for an order processor, also a CSR, and generally for a company that would do fulfillment in this dashboard, because we have sales quotes and sales orders as well as cases. Within the dashboard, we have information like charts that give us some data about, in this case, our product groups that we've had orders for between January 1st, in 2019 calendar year. We have information about numbers of cases that are currently in different categories, purchase approvals that might need to be reviewed and approved by this individual. And I'm logged in as a user called Mark V. So the dashboard is the starting point, the landing page that users begin their day on. And in order to understand the dashboard, we have to understand a couple of concepts. Coordinators and responsible. So let's take a look at what a coordinators and responsible mean in the PrintVIS system. So you'll notice that I have a cases responsible and a cases coordinator tile on my dashboard. I'm going to click on the coordinator tile. In the PrintVIS system, the term coordinator is synonymous with CSR or project manager. In this case, because I'm logged in as the Mark V user, all of these I am marked as the coordinator on. In other words, these are all cases for which I am the CSR. I'm responsible for these these customers or for this product line, however you've divided your business. When you assign a coordinator to a case, that person is supposed to sort of own that case from cradle to grave. So in this case, I have these different orders, these different cases, some of which have not been quoted to the customer yet, some of which have been quoted but not ordered, and some of which are in the order phase. If I go back and I look at the responsible, I'm going to find that I'm not always the coordinator on all the responsibles. So here you can see that I'm the coordinator on some, but COC is a coordinator on some others. However, I'm marked as responsible on all of them. The responsible person is the one for whom they now hold the hot potato. That case, that file folder of information has been passed to their desk for them to do something on. So if they're an estimator, they would be responsible for producing the estimate. If they're a planner, they're responsible for planning the job into the production equipment and into the shop floor schedule. So the idea of responsible and coordinator are, the coordinator is the CSR who manages it. The responsible is the person with the current status in the workflow making them responsible for the next step. In order to keep track not only of who's responsible, but when they're supposed to have their task done, PrintVIS has a concept called a deadline. So if we go back to the PrintVIS Role Center and we go into cases responsible, we're going to find that there's a deadline date. And the deadline date is the date by which we should have completed our activity. So for instance, in this case, today is the 3rd, and so therefore everything from the 3rd on is on time, if you will. I have time to complete that task. But everything earlier than the 3rd is late. And if we go back to our home page, we're going to see that there are actually 4 cases delayed, just like we saw in that other list. And this is them. So what deadline does is it allows us to set a kind of a workflow and a task assignment with a due date. And these deadline dates are auto-assigned by the system based on configurations and settings you choose to be a certain number of days after the date that the item is moved into a particular workflow. So let's look at the workflow. The workflow system in PrintVIS uses something called status flows. Again, let's go into my case. So here I'm a coordinator on a case, and I'll pick one of the ones where I'm also responsible. I'll choose one of these late ones. What I found is that I have a status code called production, a responsible myself, and a deadline of, in this case, the 26th. So I'm responsible for making sure the production is done by the 26th. Let's look at this list of status codes. So as you can see, there's a lot of status codes in the PrintVIS system. These are the ones that come in the sample company. But as you can see, there's a new button, and you can create as many entries or delete the ones that are here, rearrange them, change their sorting order in any way you want. This is being set up to be a fairly traditional small commercial printer. So a request would be a request for quotation. A web request would be basically something that would come in through your web to print solution. Web order, another example of something where a web order has come from the web, and the customer was able to complete the order, and therefore it was just processed. If you don't use the web, or if you haven't chosen those, it'll be skipped. So the system is designed so that it knows the source of the order, and if you were to choose a direct order, just keying it in, it will ignore these ones, because you can choose which of these status codes are assigned to which type of order and which product group. We frequently see plating as a status code, but a lot of customers have both digital and litho, and if they're doing an offset job, then they're going to be using plating, but if they're doing a digital job, they'll skip that step, and that's just implicit in the system. Product groups and order types. Let's take a look. Back to my role center. Once again, if I go into one of my cases, let's take this booklet here. You can see the job name is booklet. If I go into this case, I could see that I have a product group 300. And if I click on product group list, 300 is a magazine. So I have these product groups, and once again, I can create new product groups at any time. And the product groups contain information about what workflow will be followed in order to produce this product. So the status codes that we talked about just a minute ago, that's going to be followed based on which product group. So you set those status codes up per product group. Also, you can assign a template to a product group, which is really just a case that you did previously that you think is representative of how you would want that made. And for instance, in this 3-panel brochure, there's a template 169. So when I go and create a 3-panel brochure, it'll automatically choose the press that I'm going to run it on. It'll automatically perhaps set up finishing equipment that's needed, folding, etc., that are required in order to make that run properly without me having to re-choose it every time. So the template allows me to set how I'm going to make it. I can also leave it fairly open, so if I want to, I can more or less build them as I go. Even so, each machine and each type of operation is templated with extra information. So I don't have to refill everything and every time. I just basically have to pick what I'm going to be doing to that in order to produce it. And we'll get into that when I cover estimating. There's also something called an order type. And an order type also impacts the status codes that the job will run through. So direct order type, for instance, would be one in which I'm getting a direct sale. Customer calls me or sends me an email and I have a request for proposal, request for quote from them. Web shop obviously would be something where I'm got an order type that's coming in through the web, or gang run for where I'm ganging jobs together. And as you can see, there's a new button on this and I can create new order types without having to necessarily be limited to just the ones you see here. The customer has complete control over how they set the system up. There is a default sort of template that you can use to start, or you can build it up from scratch. Finally, we'll look at requests, quotes, and orders. So I've talked about cases, and I've talked about them as either quotes or orders. Let's take a look at that. Here I am in my responsible case list, and you'll see that I have some cases that have an ID, like this one, but does not have a quote number or an order number. So I have quote and order. Some of them have a quote number without an order number. You also might find some that have an order number without a quote, and many will have both. So within the PrintVIS system, when I create a order, I'll do a new order. So when I create an order, by default, it's a request. It is going to have an ID when I'm done, but it won't have a quote number or order number. Let me pick a customer, tab off that, and you'll see that it's assigned a case ID, 232, and its status code is request. Request is request for quotation. I could say what kind of order it is, and it's defaulted to direct, that's fine, and what product group I want to produce. I'll do a magazine. I'll do a 12-page plus cover. When I've put in the information I need for that magazine, and I change the status to quote, I'm assigned a quote number by the PrintVIS system, because basically what I've done by saying I've changed the status to quote is I've said I'm ready to start quoting. Now obviously I haven't filled any information in on this case as to what this 12-page plus cover really is going to be, how many colors it is, and what kind of paper I want to use. But normally the CSR would fill that information in, and then if it was a templated order, perhaps the company would allow the CSR to finish the quote and send the quote letter direct to the customer. Or it would go to an estimator if it's a little bit more complicated order, or in companies where they don't feel comfortable with the CSR doing that. We've covered a very basic introduction to PrintVIS and some of its capabilities. And what we'll do in our next session is we'll get into the estimating features of PrintVIS itself, and we'll actually build out an estimate for one of these items for a case and follow it from the request stage through the quote and to becoming an order. To learn more, visit us at www.sabrelimited.com. Reach out and contact us at any time, and look for more videos on our website. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.